Begin this morning, though, with those new plans from the CDC to start that rollout of COVID-19 vaccines to kids under 5.
The FDA will meet on February 15th, that's next Tuesday, to consider emergency use authorization for Pfizer's 3-dose regimen, even before clinical trials have been completed for these shots. Now, if the shots are authorized, the federal government plans on sending out 10 million doses across the country, according to documents from the CDC. Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor, Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, good to have you with us right away this morning to walk us through what we know about the data behind the vaccines for children under the age of 5, and tell us what's the likelihood the FDA does grant this emergency use authorization.
Joe, this might be a really unprecedented event because, as you mentioned, it's an ongoing trial. We're not even sure if it's exactly going to be 3 doses when the FDA advisory committee meets. They mentioned starting with 2. Full data packets are going to be posted to the website tomorrow, so I'll be sure to update you on that. But given the confidence, the FDA has already sent out guidance to many of our practices, including mine, that we will start receiving shots as early as the end of next week. So that makes a lot of assumptions that the FDA is going to write pretty strong language supporting this, that the advisory committee will support this, and that the CDC's advisory committee, which meets following the FDA, will also support this. But I think the truth is out that we're already making plans to try to get as many children under 5 vaccinated as quickly as possible, starting as early as February 21st.
Let's talk about the other big story this week. Some states like New York and California are ending their mask mandates this week. Others are waiting till the end of the month. Let's take a listen to what New York's Governor Kathy Hochul had to say about the end of mask mandates yesterday.
New Yorkers, this is what we've been waiting for. Tremendous progress after 2 long years. And we're not done, but this is trending in a very, very good direction, and that is why we are now approaching a new phase in this pandemic.
So, Doctor, is now the right time to be ending these mask mandates in New York? And what could be the impact of this in our ability to try and stop COVID spread?
Yeah, so now is the right time to talk about ending mask mandates. I'm fully supportive of that because the numbers are consistent. But ending it today or even in the next several days is premature, and here's why. To your point, Joe, we are seeing double-digit decreases, but we still have about 200,000 cases a day. That's at the peak. That rivals and is exactly the same as the peak of the Delta surge. So we're still in the thick of it. There's still a lot of virus circulating. It would be great, though, to say, here are the metrics we're going to watch for so that we can take them away, not just for indoor events, which is what we're seeing around the country, but also to talk about schools. And I think that planning, along with the language of what would we think about to bring them back, is what we need to see together. Because the worst thing is when you feel duped, we take them away, we declare kind of a pseudo victory, and then we're told several months later, well, we all need to go back to these measures again. People need clarity and consistency. But the end of the kind of uncertainty feels very close. And especially once these vaccines roll out, everyone will have an option to protect themselves in some form.
Finally, Dr. Patel, we do have a question from one of our viewers. They want to know if it's safe for them to get the booster shot against COVID and if they should continue getting any other boosters that become available.
Yeah, so the booster or the 3rd shot, if you got the mRNA series, is very safe. In fact, the data is totally just overwhelmingly unanimous around the world. This booster shot helps protect not just against Omicron, but can also help protect against symptomatic infection, protecting you for those symptoms if you get a breakthrough infection. And then everybody's asking about a 4th shot. If you're immunocompromised, and there are millions who are, you do need a 4th shot. Talk to your doctor. But otherwise, we're watching closely for data from Israel and the UK and some other countries. Not clear yet if all of us will need a 4th shot. It might be certain populations, but don't rush to the pharmacy just yet.
All right, Dr. Kavita Patel, as always, thanks for answering our questions. And if you have a question for one of our doctors, let us know. You can email us at morningnewsnow@nbcuni.com with your questions. You can also let us know if you want to stay anonymous.
Now this morning to the crisis along the Russia-Ukraine border. As diplomatic talks continue across Europe today, Russia and Belarus are starting 10 days of joint military drills with 30,000 Russian troops expected to take part in those. Meanwhile, U.S. officials have told NBC News that the Biden administration is firming up plans to get Americans out of Ukraine if Russia invades, but only via neighboring Poland. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin is in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and we're also joined by our White House correspondent, Josh Letterman. Good morning to the both of you. Aaron, I'll start with you there on the ground in Ukraine. So should Americans living in Ukraine be concerned about these potential evacuation plans? What do we know about how they get in on these? And what's the advice right now? And also, just have you heard anything from U.S. citizens living there?
Hey, Savannah. Well, the advice from the U.S. State Department is to leave and to leave as soon as possible. And this has been the advice for some days now, with some 7,500 U.S. citizens thought to be inside Ukraine, registered with the embassy, although U.S. officials estimate the number could be larger than that. And they're asking people to leave now. On the State Department website, supplying instructions, a list of airlines that they could take. They're also offering financial assistance, given the military buildup that we're seeing on three sides of the Ukrainian border, as well as the COVID situation here. The numbers have been spiking. They'd like to see U.S. citizens leave now. Now, just yesterday, the Pentagon announcing its plans for evacuation in the event of a Russian invasion. And those plans do not include the deployment of U.S. military troops to Ukraine. The troops will be staged from nearby Poland. In the event of an invasion, it will be up to U.S. citizens to make their way through the western portion of the country to the border, where they will be met with assistance. We were at a rally over the weekend for solidarity. We were speaking to some Americans who live here, and despite the warnings from the State Department, they're adamant that they want to stay. Take a listen.
If it was up to me, I would bring the United States military right here, right now. If Russian soldiers come on Ukrainian soil, they're going to have to die. And somebody's going to have to help the Ukrainian army make that happen.
I'm not afraid. I'm right here in the center of Kyiv and the center of the capital of Ukraine, and I am not afraid. If the Russians come and advance further, because they've already invaded 8 years ago, this is nothing new for us. If they come further, I'm going to be ready.
I was speaking to David Placer, who you just heard from, speaking to him this morning, and I asked him if his plans had changed in light of what was announced at the Pentagon yesterday. He said no. He said he considers Kyiv his home. He has no plans to leave.
And also, notably, Aaron, we hear him say, I'm going to be ready. And you've also brought us that reporting of these citizens who are living there, who are just preparing and participating in exercises themselves, which has been some pretty powerful imagery there. Josh, let's bring you in here. We've seen U.S. troops deployed to Poland in recent days, as this announcement also just comes. Is there any indication these forces are being readied to help with this evacuation of Americans if war breaks out? What's the Pentagon saying about this?
Well, they certainly could be involved in that effort, Savannah. This is the 82nd Airborne, and those troops, as you heard from Aaron, are supposed to stay on the Polish side of the border. There have been no orders given for them to actually go into Ukraine. So the idea is that they would set up medical checkpoints, handle processing and logistics, as well as other types of assistance to Americans who would make their own way to Poland from Ukraine to then be evacuated. But of course, if this situation gets really messy on the ground, it is possible that could change. Here's Pentagon spokesman John Kirby saying it's possible those troops could go into Ukraine.
When the Secretary decided to send leading elements of the 82nd Airborne, which we talked about very publicly, we said from the very get-go that one of the reasons why we chose that unit is they're multi-mission and they're on a high alert readiness posture as it is. I can't rule out the fact that these soldiers could be used with to some degree with evacuation assistance on the other side of that border.
But U.S. officials are stressing that this is not the withdrawal from Afghanistan. The two situations are not comparable, and they're pointing out there's still a functioning international airport in Kyiv. There are trains. There are other ways for Americans to get themselves out of Ukraine. So they are hoping that whatever evacuation for the between 6,000 and 7,000 Americans that U.S. officials estimate are in Ukraine will be a much less messy exit than it was from Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Aaron, let's bring you back in here. Ukraine's foreign ministry has been tweeting this morning saying Russian warships are actually blocking parts of the Black Sea as part of their military drills. What's going on with that?
Yeah, this is an area of concern, Savannah. Ukrainian Defense Ministry saying that large areas of the Black and Azov Seas could be unsafe in light of military exercises that the Kremlin now has scheduled for the 13th to the 19th of this month. Ukrainian Foreign Ministry outraged by this in a tweet. Its spokesperson saying, "We strongly protest Russia's decision to block parts of the Black Sea, the Sea of Azov, and the Kerch Strait under the pretext of naval drills. The unprecedentedly large area of exercises essentially disables international navigation in both seas, leading to economic consequences in the region and for Ukrainian ports in particular. We are working closely to partners to ensure that such aggressive actions of Russia as part of its hybrid warfare against Ukraine receive an appropriate response." Russian media quoting Russia's spokesperson as saying that all military maneuvers and deployments by Russian ships in the Black Sea are conducted in strict compliance with international law. The Kremlin is insisting that these exercises will not block the waters, although I was speaking to Ukraine's former defense minister who said that this situation is, quote, very bad. Savannah.
All right, Aaron and Josh, thank you both so much.
On Capitol Hill this morning, a high-profile top aide to former President Trump is facing a subpoena for information about the January 6th insurrection. Peter Navarro is a former White House trade advisor. In a book and in interviews, he detailed efforts to try and overturn the results of the 2020 election. Now, the House panel investigating the Capitol attack is demanding he provide records and a deposition under oath. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell joins us now with more on this. Leanne, good morning to you. So why is Peter Navarro's deposition important to the House Select Committee, and what does this subpoena tell us about where the entire investigation stands?
Yeah, good morning, Joe. So Peter Navarro is Trump's former top trade advisor, and like you mentioned, he wrote in a book and he gave interviews about the Green Bay sweep, is what he called it, in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Well, the chair of that committee, Benny Thompson, referenced that book in those interviews in a statement with this subpoena that was sent out, saying that Navarro hasn't been shy about his role in efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election and has even discussed the former president's support for those plans. The chair goes on to say that more than 500 witnesses have provided information in our investigation, and we expect Mr. Navarro to do so as well. So that is an interesting point as well, the fact that 500 people have complied and spoken in this investigation. A lot of people like Peter Navarro who have been subpoenaed have chosen not to cooperate. We'll see where Navarro goes, but he gave a big hint to CNBC when he claimed executive privilege with his conversations with the former president, a claim that has not held up in court. But this investigation is moving forward and getting closer and closer to the former president, Joe.
I want to ask you about another headline this morning, Leanne. The National Archives has asked the Justice Department to look into how former President Trump handled White House records. What's going on here? Why is that?
Yeah, this is a big development in this story that the Washington Post broke last week, that the archives is receiving documents from the former president that have been ripped up, shredded, taped back together, and that they also had to get 15 boxes of documents from Mar-a-Lago, which were supposed to be at the National Archives. Now, there is a law that governs this, that White Houses and presidents have to turn over all of their official information to the National Archives at the end of his term. And so there seems to be so many violations that the archives has asked the Justice Department to look into this, see if there were any laws that were broken. We have not yet heard from the Justice Department if they're going to do this. Sure.
And Leanne, let's talk about some legislation in the Senate. A big vote this morning on a bill that would change how sexual assault claims are handled in the workplace. What should we know about this?
Yeah, this is actually a big deal. Advocates are calling the biggest labor relations change for employees and workers in generations. So many companies require people go to forced arbitration if they have claims of gender discrimination, pay wage disputes, et cetera. Well, now on two specific issues, sexual assault and sexual harassment, being forced into arbitration, which benefits the employer, is now banned. So this is a very big deal that passed the House last week. It's going to pass the Senate today. Leader Schumer spoke about it on the Senate floor yesterday. Let's listen.
For decades, abusers have used arbitration as a shield for their horrific behavior. Employees have been put at massive disadvantage when trying to hold wrongdoers accountable. This law will finally change all that. I look forward to finishing the work of passing this bill through the Senate and getting it closer to the president's desk.
So this will impact 60 million Americans who are under these non-disclosure contracts, and it's going to be celebrated by a lot of workers, Joe.
All right, Leanne Caldwell, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Let's now get a check on your morning news now weather.
Bill Cairns is with us. Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning. So all eyes on California, not just for the Super Bowl, but also with this record heat wave that we're in the middle of. And today could be one of the hottest days of the week. We have, of course, when you get the really hot temperatures in California, you get the gusty winds coming out of the mountains. It compresses the air, and that tends to warm the air. So we have high wind warnings that are up for some of the mountainous areas. And, of course, if any fires do form, they could spread rapidly. But we did have a wet December, so that should reduce that concern. Up to 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. As far as some of the big cities go, we're looking at Santa Clarita and Thousand Oaks. That could be some of the higher gusts in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range. And the heat advisories go from Los Angeles all the way down to San Diego. Temperatures up to 90 degrees are possible today. We're expecting a high somewhere right around 89 degrees in LA today. And by the way, it can get hot in February. Back in 1995, LA hit 95 degrees. So we're not going to threaten the all-time hottest February temperature on record, but it is going to be a long duration heat wave. Notice upper 80s right through the weekend with a Super Bowl Sunday high of around 87 degrees. So pretty rare to get 5 straight days in the 80s, and we can call these the Santa Ana winds. The record high today is 88 in LA. We should be 89. Notice San Francisco has a chance for breaking your record high. So this isn't just Southern California. And even tomorrow, we do it all over again. Sacramento could be a record high. Same with Fresno. And then into the weekend, temperatures stay pretty mild. Doesn't really cool off until we get to Monday in many locations. And as far as the Super Bowl goes on NBC, of course, we will be watching temperatures in the mid-80s. Highs earlier in the day will be 87, about 83 degrees. It'll be sunny. It'll be warm. The breeze should not be as gusty as today either, so it should be kind of nice. And the rest of the country, guys, today is walk outdoor day on the eastern seaboard. I don't know if you want to eat lunch yet. Temperature around 50 is a little, 50 degrees outside eating is a little chilly for me, but I'd say get outside and enjoy the sun.
Yeah, we're not complaining, though. We're all jealous of California right now, I think.
Yeah, really. I kind of like it. It's like a crisp, easy day. All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
See you in a bit.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.